Thanks, guys. Pobelter, congratulations on your victory. With this, Liquid has qualified for their first finals, but this actually isn't your first finals for you. You qualified last summer. Is the feeling any different?
Honestly, it just feels so good each time. Like, each time you go past the next stage, like, it felt so good to go from quarters to semis and from semis to finals now. Yeah, it just felt great.
And it seems like you guys have kind of blown through the competition. What's your experience through playoffs been like so far?
I think as playoffs started to come close, we started to really nail down a lot of the things that were making us lose as a team during the regular season, and we were able to just improve really quickly, and everyone was just working hard and putting in a lot of time. So I think that's why Team Liquid is kind of showing a different color than we did in the regular season, and I think we can carry this on to the finals too.
Carrying it on to the finals. Well, last week, Kane said that you guys stomped through Cloud9, but you guys weren't quite satisfied with the win. Why is that, and are you happy with today's?
C9, the set against C9 was pretty messy. Even the ones we won, it was kind of like maybe they had the control and then they were afraid to do anything with it, so we just slowly were able to take it back. This time our wins were really decisive, and it wasn't really like a wishy-washy, like 45-minute drawn-out game. And even the one that we lost, which I kind of threw my bad, we were definitely in the position to win that game. So yeah, it feels like each week we're just improving a lot.
Well, you've done it, you've made the improvements, and it has all paid off. You play in the finals in Miami next week. Who's joining you?
I think either team can advance, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to beat them.
There you go. Pobelter and Liquid are coming for you. Congratulations again on your victory. And for more, let's hear from the desk.
Thank you very much, Avli. Some much-deserved confidence coming out of Pobelter there with a 3-1 victory over Echo Fox to book their trip to Miami to play in the finals at the Fillmore. Let's talk about how they crafted this victory because, again, Game 3, fairly crushing to a degree, and it seemed like the wheels were falling off for Echo Fox there near that mid-to-late game.
Same three bans. You get Trundle on Smithy again. He had a little bit of a rough start, but started bouncing back into this game, and it got a little scrappy, but Impact had great TPs and flanks in a lot of fights this game. A little crazy that Smithy, after getting the ult, goes right back in, gets popped for it, but the idea was good overall. And then as the skirmishes kept ringing out, Impact felt like he was having a bigger presence in them.
Yeah, and just you can also see how the Olaf Trundle matchup plays in team fights, even if Smithy was getting run over in the early game. Really spread out fights ended up happening in the mid game, but as they continued, TL would come out on top, mainly because really good TPs by Impact. I think really good positioning by Doublelift through a lot of this. You can see he's always full health at the back of these fights, able to pick up a lot of kills. And at this point, TL had made Echo Fox mental boom.
Yeah, mental definitely boom at this point. They had once that jungle advantage was lost, it did feel like they started going a little unfocused. And this is really the highlight of it, where Dardox just charges in there way ahead of his team. No one else is quite ready to get involved, and he's dead before Hooney's even over the wall. This is right as Baron spawning, and this is kind of just the icing on the cake for Team Liquid.
Yeah, definitely some, some mental fortitude issues coming in here right at the end of the game. But ultimately for Team Liquid, they'll close it out nice and smoothly. Again, we heard from Pobelter there just in the interview that in comparison to their series against Cloud9, he feels that their wins that they crafted here were cleaner, crisper, right? Whereas in C9, there were definitely elements that they felt were maybe handed back to them that they didn't deserve.
I agree. I mean, in the C9 games, even though it was a 3-0, 7,000 gold deficit in Game 1, actual deficit in Game 2, and the last two games here were sub 25 minutes, even though they did drop that Game 2.
Yeah, we'll get back to the over-unders in the average game time in just a minute, which was under. But to hear more from our first finalists, let's go ahead and send it back down to Avli and Team Liquid's Jungler.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Smithy. Congratulations on your victory. I want to ask you, what was the winning factor for Liquid today?
I think it was mainly draft phase that was a really big part. When we were scrimming, we didn't really find an answer to either Trundle or even our mid picks. It was really well thought out on our end of the coaching staff. So I think that's how we breezed through mid game so easily.
Well, tell me a little bit about that Trundle in the jungle. What was the inspiration behind the pick, and how are you so successful with it today?
I think I saw it 2 weeks ago against, I think it was LCS. It was Julius against Zach. I was like, oh, it's not bad against Zach, but like, what if you go against everything? So like, we just tried it, and then it went really well in scrims.
Was it a lot of trial and error in scrims, or were there more maybe like theory crafting behind it?
I think it was mainly trial and error on our end. So yeah, it worked out so far.
Well, you took on the LCS All-Pro jungler Dardoch today. What did you think of your opponent?
I think Dardoch played really well this game actually. They played well with their mid pressure. They killed me a lot of times actually, and yeah, they played till like dragons, but they faltered really easily when we made like team plays. So like we all played together as a 5 because they played mainly split push and like really squishy. So I think we won because of that.
And I just got finished speaking with Pobelter. He sounded pretty confident going into the finals, but I want to ask you, who do you think you're going to take on in Miami?
I think they're both equally skilled right now, since I think CG played really well in the TSM series, and 100 Thieves have been looking pretty well. They got first place. But yeah, like Eugene said, I don't think it really matters. We're just going to play our own game.
Doesn't matter. Play your own game. Congratulations again on that victory. Wish you the best of luck in Miami. Back to the desk.
Thank you very much, Avli. Smithy definitely had his hands full when it comes to, you know, the jungle-specific matchup. Of course, it was in those team fight phases that Team Liquid was able to get their edges. But while we talk about this series, I think it is important to recognize the fact that Echo Fox, their journey's not done. Whereas last week in the quarterfinals, we were saying goodbye to teams upon losing the best of 5. Echo Fox still has to go on and contend for a 3rd place finish here and those all-important championship points, as well as the bid into Rift Rivals.
I think it's really important that they get it together, as they seemed like they were falling apart towards the end there. The patch doesn't change. They're going to have whatever specific answers they have against either Clutch Gaming or 100 Thieves during that matchup. And they don't have a good history. Like, Dardoch doesn't have a good history in 3rd, 4th place matches. Huni
doesn't.
As well, right?
Right.
So it's tough for them because it's a continuation of that collapse that they've had, from the roster changes they tried to do in week 9 to pulling it back together now and not having that roster. It's been a bad finish for Echo Fox.
I might be mistaken here, but isn't the only time that they both have played in the 3rd, 4th place match against each other in the spring in 2016, and Huni beat Dardoch?
Yes.
I think that's the only time. But either way,
right,
they got to work together now, because it did not look pretty today. The fact that they changed their picks up, but they didn't really change the bans out. The Ashe was a clear counter. The Caitlyn was doing fine.
Right.
So why are you still banning out 2 things? It's not really netting you an advantage anymore. It felt like just play Caitlyn into Jhin or something. I'm not sure.
And in a sense, it looks kind of like the classic super team or individually talented driven team, and the way that they sometimes curtail near the end of a season, right? You look at the way that Echo Fox started all the way back, weeks 1 through 5, hard smashing the rest of the league, right? Because they simply were better across the board and gaining advantages. Obviously, meta helped them as well with Huni up there in the top lane. And then you fast forward to now, though, and they as a team still don't seem to be gelling, while teams like Team Liquid were very vocal about, hey, we got to figure out how we play as 5, not how we play individually.
Yeah, Huni looked absurdly frustrated, and I can understand why, because he, I think, was winning every matchup that he could. The first game, he was hugely up Sion versus Shen. The last game, he was actually up in CS against Shen and was first on some of the roams until the team play started falling apart. And I understand why they did the subs, because Phoenix looked bad, Altec and Adrian looked bad in this series. That part of the map, I think, really let them down down the stretch, and it's going to be interesting to see how they move forward.
Now, of course, you could tell that everybody gave their all to make sure that Team Liquid would make their first finals, but Doublelift was crucial in booking that spot, and he will get our player of the series.
And it's not just for everything that happened on the Rift as well, absorbing a ton of bans in the draft phase, getting pushed down to the Ashe, and still outperforming his counterpart for the majority of the series was a huge factor in team fights, setting his team up for kills, shooting those Ashe arrows consistently, as well as having a good laning phase.
Yeah, died twice the entire series, didn't die in any of their wins. Ashe is a pick that almost no one else has pulled out, but because of the bans and because he liked its lane matchup against Caitlyn, was very effective for them in giving them some vision to repel Echo Fox's aggression. Just really solid play by Doublelift.
Yeah.
Joining this Team Liquid team and taking them to their first ever finals.
I will admit, I had not as closely watched him in team fights until in this series for some reason specifically, and I think it was because he was on a champion like Ashe. So being crucially aware of the lack of escapes, I was like, let's look at his positioning. And it was near flawless in most of the team fighting throughout this series.
Yeah, and I think he had a great series. A lot of the players did. Impact absorbed all the Huni pressure for the most part, completely fine.
Right.
Dardoch did get the advantage on Smithy, but every single time I felt like Smithy bounced back in the game, as well as Pobelter going even or better against Phoenix. So you kind of got to tip your cap a little bit to Steve, putting the first roster together that's going to make the finals for himself.
There were so many memes around it, right? Every season.
Everyone else was memeing. TSM was memeing. Cloud9 was memeing. And then the one
And guess who's in the finals,
Guess who's left standing.
Yeah, he took a lot of abuse so far this split.
They got one more best-of-5 standing between them and the NALCS title. Now, before we wrap up our conversation around the series, I want to revisit our over-under predictions at the beginning of the day. So polling those up for us, of course, I'll remind you that we had that 3.5 number for Doublelift. He was essentially well under at just 2. Moving right along to the game time average, which we had put at around 35.5. It was 32 minutes average before game
sure of that.
4.
Oh, yeah.
And then, boom, we crushed it and bring it under 30 minutes on average per game in a 4-game series. I mean, that's actually just astonishing as a standalone statistic.
I think you just look at how Echo Fox plays when they're behind. You kind of see it in that 4th game there. Like, they're not going to stop making plays.
Right.
If Team Liquid's on point, they're going to keep punishing those plays.
Yeah.
So
It gets bad, it gets
Echo Fox's
worse.
average game time was 37 minutes heading into this, but they just...
Team Liquid's was actually faster, though, than 35.5 coming into this, so perhaps the faster of the 2 teams. And lastly, the total number of kills in this series was put at 80.5.
Hey!
not even close. Almost 104 games.
Wow.
4 games.
Yeah.
In playoffs, too, where it's usually a slower, more mechanical, macro kind of game.
Yeah, that moves our over-under totals to 3-3.
3-3, yeah.
Series
if you're keeping track at all, or if you care,
Apparently
they're
Jad
actually
is.
tied up in their over-unders from last week to this week. With the semifinal today, our bracket only needs 1 more match before we know which teams will duke it out in Miami. Echo Fox will be slugging it out for the 3rd place match and an appearance at Rift Rivals on Saturday, while Team Liquid await their opponent after the series tomorrow, which pits 100 Thieves versus Clutch Gaming. Let's talk about that 1 seed versus 6 seed that we're going to be seeing tomorrow.
Jeez, I mean, what's left to say that like the giant killers in Clutch Gaming now going against the 2nd giant in playoffs, the other favorites. They took out 1 favorite. They're going up against the 2nd favorite.
Yep.
They have a really rough road ahead of them, and the 2 teams feel very similar in terms of play styles and who's supposed to step up.
Yeah, Febiven now the only player still remaining that's trying to win in the EU LCS and the NALCS because Huni got eliminated today. 100 Thieves still has those 2 former LCS champions in Meteos and Aftermoon. They also have the announced today coach of the split.
Yep.
And I updated my probabilities from earlier, Dash.
You going to explain them, or are you just going to say
No. Technically, based on my probabilities, TL now has a 54% chance of being LCS champions.
Wait. Oh, but that's because they only have 1 series left to play, and 100 Thieves
Correct.
has 2.
Yes,
so,
that is what
That kind
happened.
of lopsides the numbers there. Take that with a grain of salt.
If 100 Thieves meets TL in the finals, I have 100 Thieves as a slight favorite. We'll
Exactly,
see.
that's my
We'll see.
point, is if 100 Thieves wins tomorrow, then they are the actual favorite statistically against Team Liquid.
Glad
But
we
again,
covered that.
we heard from the 2 players on stage. They're not necessarily concerned with who they're going to have to play in the finals. Team Liquid is confident that they can beat either team, perhaps playing a little bit of the political correctness there and not saying that one team is favored over the other. But it does go back to this point you're talking about, Mark, where they're stylistically match up pretty evenly in the sense that they want to play a similar style.
Right. Echo Fox of these 4 teams was the only one left who did not play through their bot lane. They play through Cody-san, they play through Apollo and Hakuho, and they play through Doublelift, the other 3 teams. So these other matchups from that we're going to see in the rest of the playoffs kind of are going to be like stylistic matchups and seeing which players are actually playing better that day versus the mismatch that we saw today.
So as a gut check question, do you feel when 2 teams matching up stylistically in the meta as it is seen now, right, bot focused, that the team with the better bot lane is going to win, or the team that plays elsewhere on the map, right, assuming even or standard sustainable bot lanes is going to win?
I think it's better bot lane, but I think more importantly, it's better team play because whenever you have this bot lane focused meta, it's so much about setup to get them in the right position. And that's where I think experience comes into play a huge amount, and 100 Thieves trumps Clutch Gaming's experience heavily. And it also just depends on how much stock you put into Clutch Gaming's performance against TSM and whether that makes them top dog for beating TSM or if you're blaming TSM's poor play. And blame a little bit more TSM's poor play for that loss.
Lots of questions. We don't have a ton of answers, but we will tomorrow. Oh, yeah. A reminder that next week, the matches from Miami will start with the countdown at 12:30 p.m. PST or immediately following EU's matches in Copenhagen, whichever is later in the day. After our series tomorrow, though, make sure to stay tuned into Riot Games, where we'll be showing the NA/LCS Civil War. Oh, it gets real, ladies and gentlemen. And if you need more League in your life, stay tuned after this broadcast for a rebroadcast of the EU LCS semifinal played earlier today. Now for myself, the cast of the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for more of the NALCS. Good night.